Hi, I'm Karyl Carlson, here to read to you from another story from Oziana, 2008. The title is Bud and the Red Jinn, or Always Look a Gift Goat in the Mouth, by Jared Davis, illustrated by Anna Marie Kuhl. It was a bright summer day as King Bud of Noland and his sister Fluff set out to visit their great friend Queen Zixi of the neighboring country of Ix. Zixi would be having a celebration and had invited dignitaries from near and far to attend. She had been Bud and Fluff's friend for many years, and their two countries enjoyed such peaceful communications that it was almost as if they had been unified. To be honest, it was Zixi's birthday, but she called it the Queen's Festival so as not to disclose her age. Although she appeared to be a fair maiden, Zixi was many centuries old. But her real age would always be reflected in a mirror, and it was for this reason that she had no mirrors in her palace. Her own vanity compelled her to keep her age a secret, although she had once revealed it to Bud and Fluff. The king's coach went at a quick pace from Noland to Ix, by a road that Bud and Fluff had caused to be made between the two countries, so they could visit Zixi easily. Their first visit had been made through the air with their Aunt Rivette, who had carried them as she flew. However, she had since lost her wings and preferred to stay at home in the city of Noel. The journey was completed without any incidents, and they soon arrived at the palace of the beautiful witch queen of Ix. Queen Zixi herself came out to meet them, with a half a dozen handmaidens lifting the train of her skirt. "I am so glad you could come," she said, giving the two young rulers of Noland a warm embrace. Bud looked around at the courtyard. "I don't see many guests," he remarked. "Well, not many could make it," admitted Zixi, "but I don't mind. I'd prefer to have few guests than several. It's more personal that way." "So are we the only ones here?" asked Fluff. "Oh, no." Excuse me. Jinnicky, the Red Jinn of Ev, arrived about an hour ago. He's in my drawing room just now. Would you like to meet him?" "Oh, yes," replied Bud. He had heard of the famous Red Jinn before, but they had never met. Zixi led the way into her palace, the maidens leaving her as she entered. Walking into the drawing room, Bud saw one of the most curious people he had ever seen. Jinnicky was not a tall fellow, and he was pudgy, and he looked very jolly. But what was so odd was his clothing. His dress, he was enclosed in a red jar, his arms and legs extending through side holes at its top and bottom. His head was topped with its lid. Close to Jinnicky was a dark-skinned boy in a turban, who seemed to be a servant of sorts. Another man was sitting not far from the Jinn, keeping a close eye on his master. He was dressed in a fancy uniform with a tipped turban, and his beard and mustache stuck out in 3 points. "May I introduce King Bud of Noland and Princess Fluff," said Zixi. Jinnicky and the two followers by him stood. They bowed, but not Jinnicky, who walked straight forward and shook Bud's hand warmly. "Hi, Bud, I'm Jinnicky. Pardon me for not bowing, but it's a little hard in this jar," and he chuckled merrily. Bud smiled and laughed as well. The man with the beard and mustache walked over to Jinnicky. "You should not be so informal," he snapped. "Bud is the king of a small but mighty country." "Oh, I'm sure he doesn't mind, Alababble," returned the Jinn, laughter still in his voice. "Do you, Bud?" "Not at all," replied the young king. "Relax, old Abapple." "Alababble," corrected the surly older man. Jinnicky dismissed his servants, who went off to check on the preparations for the festivities. The Jinn's vizier was adamant about making sure all the details were perfect, and insisted on overseeing Queen Zixi's servants as well. Bud, Jinnicky, Fluff, and Zixi began talking among themselves about the affairs of state in Ev, Ix, and Noland. But as their... I don't have the right page here. As their conversation went on, it began to become more informal. Soon Jinnicky and Bud found themselves listening to Zixi and Fluff talk about things that really didn't interest them at all. So they decided to move out to the front steps to enjoy the fresh air. "Oh, now this is much more comfortable," exclaimed Jinnicky. But he then saw Alibaba storming up to him from the palace. "You really must learn to be more diplomatic," the vizier protested. "It is important that you maintain good relations with Ix." "Alibaba," began the Jinn, but Bud interrupted. "If it's all the same to you, Alibaba, I was just initiating good relations with Ev. If you're so intent on spoiling that, I guess we can have it your way." "Oh dear," stammered Alibaba. Well, with that he hurried back into the palace. The old boy needed that," laughed Jinnicky. "I can see we are going to be good friends." "Any time," Bud grinned. As the two relaxed, they noticed a rider on a horse, followed by another horse, pulling a cart right up. The rider on the horse was a tall and shapely young man dressed elegantly. As he dismounted, 4 servants got out of the cart. They were met by Ixian palace attendants, and 2 of them went to put the horses and cart in the stables. The others held a tall, flat, rectangular object between them. It was veiled. The young man and the 2 servants walked forward after parting with the attendants. Seeing Jinnicky and Bud, the young man bowed low. "Good day," he said. "I am Prince Bobo of Boboland. Is Queen Zixi in?" "Pleased to meet you," replied Jinnicky, ignoring the question. "I'm Jinnicky, the Red Jinn of Ev." "And I am King Bud of Noland." "Oh, I'm sorry I had not made your acquaintance before," Bobo apologized. "Anyway, is the Queen in?" "To be sure," replied Bud. "What is that, if I may ask?" "Oh, this?" grinned Bobo. "It's my gift for Zixi." "A gift?" asked Jinnicky. "Well, I'll bet she'll like that." Bud looked at the object, wondering what it could be. Suddenly, a horrid thought struck him. "That wouldn't happen to be a mirror, would it?" he ventured to ask. "Your Majesty is a fine guesser," replied Bobo. The 2 servants lifted the veil to reveal a large mirror in a gilt frame, studded with jewels. "Isn't it lovely?" asked Bobo. "Well, you can't give that to Zixi," exclaimed Bud abruptly. "Why?" "Well, she doesn't like mirrors," Jinnicky explained. "She's very modest, very." Bud looked at him. The Jinn quickly winked, letting him know he was wise to Zixi's secret. Whether it was because he knew magic so well, or Zixi has confided in him, Bud couldn't guess, but that wasn't important just now. "Why, whoever heard of a lady who didn't like a mirror?" asked Bobo. "Zixi's not your average lady," replied Bud. "Please cover that before she sees it." The 2 servants quickly drew the veil, but Bobo was bewildered. "Not your average lady? What are you insinuating?" "Trust us on this one," the Jinn exclaimed. And here is a picture of the Red Jinn, drawn by Anna Marie Cool. "Look, I've been sailing around the continent, trying to make peaceful connections with all the countries. If there's a reason why I shouldn't give her this mirror, I'd like a straight answer." The young monarch was becoming irritated and growing impatient. Bud and Jinnicky looked at each other. They could not betray Zixi's trust. "Why, we have none," said Jinnicky at last. "Like I said, she's extremely modest." "All right," sniffed Bobo, ignoring Bud and Jinnicky. He turned to his servants. "Come on," and they headed into the palace. "Well, we've got to do something right now," exclaimed Bud. "Why, she's sure to have his goat on over this one," replied Jinn with a chuckle. "How do you mean?" "Why, anything she does to him will serve him right for not trusting what are obviously Zixi's closest friends." "Don't you understand how this could go?" asked Bud. "I would not be surprised if Zixi declared war on Boboland because of this. I am not anxious to go to war again." "She'd go to war over a mirror?" "She declared war on me over a cloak." "I see. And if she does, being her friends, we'd have to choose sides." "We've got to stop him now," declared Bud firmly, and the 2 ran inside the palace, where they could just see Bobo and his servants at the far end of the hall, about to make the turn to the smaller hall that led to the drawing room. The noise of festivities drew Bobo and his men in the right direction. "Stop!" shouted Bud. Bobo looked, saw who it was, and